This is the solution to Wex 12.1. Okay. For part A, in fact, all of the parts, we need to first, we're going to factor the numerator and the denominator. Okay, so as for the numerator, we want to find two numbers whose product is 12 times 3. Write it with a dot. We want the product to be the product of the first and last coefficient, so 12 times 3, and we want the sum to be the middle coefficient, negative 13. Okay. Okay. So we want the product to be positive. That means that the factors are going to have to both have the same sign, but we want the sum to be negative, so that means they're both going to have to be negative. So how about negative 12 and negative 3? Right, because that has the right product, but in this case the sum would be negative 15, which is not what we're looking for. So suppose I give 12 has a factor of 2 in it, I'll give it over there. In that case, we would have negative 6, dividing that by 2, and negative 6, multiplying that one by 2. In this case, the sum is negative 12, which is not quite what we want. So I'll give a factor of 3 from this one to that one. So then we'd have what? Negative 18. Negative 18, dividing this one, multiplying that one by 3, dividing that one by 3, so negative 2. Again, the right product, but not the right sum. Let's think about it for a minute. Here's one we haven't tried. We can take divide this one by 2 and give it to that one. So that'd be negative 9 and negative 4. So now the product is right, and the sum is right. Terrific. So we can use that to split the middle term. That's telling us that we could write the numerator as 12w squared minus 9w minus 4w plus 3. Then we could make two groups of 2. So this is the first group, the first two terms is the first group, the second two terms is the second group. In the first group, we'll factor out the greatest common factor. 3 divides 12 and 9, and also w, so 3w comes out. Then we would have 4w minus 3. 4w minus 3. Then we could factor out, the best we could do is factor out a negative 1, so minus 4w minus 3. So notice the distribution. when you distribute the subtraction, that becomes positive 3. Now 4w plus 3 occurs twice, so here and here. So this is the same. As a result, we can factor it out, and when we do that, we get 3w minus 1, because there's one of those, multiplied by 4w minus 3. So that's the factorization of the numerator. For the denominator, now we want to find two numbers whose product is the product of the first and last coefficient. So that would be 3 multiplied by negative 1. And we want the sum to be the middle coefficient. Well, how about 3 and negative 1? Add those together, you get 2. So we found it. Terrific. So that was the winner up there. Here's the winner here. Therefore, we can use 3 and negative 1 to split the middle term. So this would be 3w squared, and I'll say minus a single w, and then plus 3 w's. Adding those together is 2 w's, and then minus 1. Again, now that we have 4 terms, we can make 2 groups of 2. So we could, in the first group, we could factor out a w multiplied by 3w minus 1, and then plus, well, 3w minus 1. Nothing needs to be factored out. So 3w minus 1. Now, 3w minus 1 is the same, so it can be factored out. So that would be w plus 1 multiplied by 3w minus 1. So that's the factorization of the denominator. So let me do a quick check. 3w squared plus 3w minus a single w minus 1. Good. All right. So, fine. Therefore, expression A just the factorization of the given question, the given expression, is the following numerator. So it would be 3w minus 1 multiplied by 4w minus 3, and then that divided by I'll commute these two and write 3w minus 1 multiplied by w plus 1. So that's expression A. Now finally we can start on answering parts little a, little b, and little c. Okay, so for little a, expression b, you can observe that that would cancel. So expression b is you cancel the 3w minus 1s, and you're left with 4w minus 3 in the numerator and w plus 1 in the denominator. So that's the answer to part A, little a. The answer to part little b. The natural domain of expression A, well, the only restrictions come from divisions by 0, so division by 0 when 3w minus 1 is 0, or w plus 1 is 0. So in each case we can solve for w. So this would be 3w is 1, or w is negative 1. So w is a third, or w is negative 1. At those places there would be a division by 0, so they're not permitted. Therefore, the natural domain of expression A is, as a plot, it would be any number whatsoever except for negative 1 and a third. So negative 1 is not permitted, and a third is not permitted, but anything else is fine. So all of this is fine, all of this is fine, all of this is fine, but not those two numbers. In algebraic notation, you could write that as w less than negative 1, or negative 1 less than w less than a third, or w more than a third. Then in interval notation, you could write that as negative infinity to negative 1 union negative 1 to a third union a third to infinity. So that's the answer to part B. And then for part C, now you have division by 0 only at w is negative 1. So it's like the problem at 1/3, somehow we lost track of it. So now the answer is anything but negative 1. So anything to the left of negative 1, or anything to the right of negative 1. So w less than negative 1, or w more than negative 1. And then in interval notation you could say negative infinity to negative 1 union negative 1 to infinity.